guys, and welcome back to The Bright Side. Macy here, the Bright Side Girl. And today we are going to do the top 5 books I read in one sitting / one day. Most of these books I read in one sitting, which means I read them all the way through without like stopping and doing anything else. A few of them I read in one day, so like only in a couple of sittings. But these were books that just really grabbed me. They aren't necessarily like my favorite books ever, but they're books that you just like, you have to keep going and you have to know what's gonna happen. Most of them are really short, so that's kind of why you want to finish them in one sitting, because it's easy and you can just like fly through them. A lot of them have similar tones to them, but I just thought I'd start doing this every time this happens because it doesn't really happen that often for me. So I'll probably be able to do a couple of these types of videos every year. So without further ado, we're just gonna get started. First up, we're gonna start with The Ocean at the End of the Lane by Neil Gaiman. This is one of the first books that I read in one sitting. It is very, very short. It's only like 175 pages. This one was my first official Neil Gaiman book that I read like all the way through without stopping. This one is an adult book, but I think it's appropriate for a younger generation. I don't remember there being like super mature content. It is very like creepy and scary, but this is about a middle-aged man who attends a funeral in his hometown, and while he's there he kind of visits the place that he used to live, and memories of his childhood and things that were sort of magical and spooky kind of come up, so he kind of like relives his childhood while he's there, and you get to kind of peek in at what was happening. So this one is super, super thought-provoking. It's definitely like magical realism. It can kind of go whatever way you want to, like in your head, how you kind of assess the story. So I kind of like that, if that makes sense. I feel like different people will get different things out of the story. It is super, super creepy though. So there are a few things in here that kind of stuck with me, like almost in a bad way as far as like the creep factor, but I am kind of a wuss, so just kind of keep that in mind. But I was like glued to this book and I had to know like what was happening and what was going to happen next, and I really, really enjoyed it. Next up is Tell Me Something Real by Calla Devlin. I mentioned this one briefly in my It's Finally Fall book tag. This one I read in one sitting. This one's longer. This one's 287 pages, so that's a lot longer for a one sitting type of book. But this is the first book that I've read that had like, I don't know how to describe it because it's not really a thriller, but it's like, it's contemporary. It's about 3 girls and their mom has cancer, and the girls are younger and they're dealing with their mom having cancer and each other, and it's about like friendship and family and all that kind of stuff. But there's like a twist in here that I did not see coming. I don't really like books about like people like dealing with cancer or relatives that have cancer. It just stresses me out, and I read for like enjoyment as much as possible, and so things that get like too close to real life situations that aren't actually real life situations, I just stay away from. So if I'm gonna read a book about someone that's like overcoming cancer or disease or something like that, I want it to be nonfiction and not fiction, if that makes sense. But this one has a twist in here that I just was like, what? And like, I just wasn't expecting it at all. And I really loved her characters in here. The way she describes all 3 of the sisters is so great. They live near San Diego, and I think they have some Mexican heritage in them, or they have friends with Mexican heritage. And so you learn like a little bit about that. One of the younger sisters in here is like obsessed with saints, and she keeps like looking up all this information about saints, and she's really little, and it's just, I don't know, it was really sweet and shocking and interesting, and I really, really loved it, especially for the style of book that it is. So I definitely recommend this one if you like trigger warnings for cancer and illness and things like that. It has like this cool twist in it, and it was so well written. The writing style of this is just beautiful, and I just gobbled it up. The next one was We Were Liars by E. Lockhart. This one has a similar vibe to the other 2 as far as like the flow of the book, but this is the first book I read with an unreliable narrator. This book's about 221 pages, but a couple of the pages have poems on them, so it's probably closer to like 200 pages. So this one is about a family who is very wealthy, and they own some property on an island, or they own the entire island, I can't remember. And it is about a girl, and something happens to her, some sort of like accident or tragedy, and she is very unreliable at explaining to you, so you're kind of like going back and she's remembering things slowly as to what happened, and you're trying to kind of figure that out. And also, like, in between the chapters, you're getting little like poems. This sounds weird, but you're getting little like fairy tale poems that have some sort of connection to the family's history and the family. It's like it would be like if she wrote poems about like how she was feeling about the situation, but she writes them kind of like a fantasy way about like kings and queens and mice, and that part I just loved. Again, not my typical book. I think this one is more of a thriller, not like scary or spooky, but just more of like a thriller aspect, and there's like a lot of like drama and stuff in it. But I just couldn't stop. I was like obsessed. I was like reading it all the way through. I knew something shocking was happening like towards the end or in the middle or whatever. And I kind of hate when I know that, because I feel like I figure it out and then it ruins the book for me. But this one, I did not at all. I really try hard not to figure things out, because I think it kind of hinders my enjoyment of the book. And this one shocked me so much, and I don't know if I'll ever read it again, but I loved it. I thought it was done it was just done so well, especially for the fact that I don't really normally enjoy this type of like dramatic family situation, contemporary, not my usual contemporary that is, but I couldn't stop reading it. I had to tell my husband all about it, and I really liked it. Next up, we have a longer one. This one is Immortal by Gillian Shields. This one's about 340 pages. I think I read this in 2 or 3 sittings, but in one day. So this one, I'm not really sure why I had to like finish it. The way that it was written, it just made me do it, and it was completely different than the other 3. This is not contemporary. This is set like at a boarding school, and there's a girl, and she finds a journal from someone that in the past, and she is like reading her journal, or we're reading her journal, like there's journal entries, and then there's this page, and she's uncovering this mystery. So it's kind of more like a gothic mystery. It's set in like modern times, but they're in like a boarding school in England, and so she can't like use her phone or anything like that because it's like very old-fashioned. And I don't know what it is, because I wouldn't say that this is like one of my all-time favorite books or anything like that, but I just like, I had to know the mystery, and I don't feel like it was super hard to figure out, but I didn't figure it out, and I really enjoyed it. I didn't enjoy the second one as much, but I think it was because I was like more interested in reading other things. So I'm gonna go back and re-listen to these on audiobook and try and finish out the series. But it's got like gothic mystery, there's like magic and boarding school and all that stuff that we really love, and I was just really surprised that I had to read this in one sitting. But yeah, it was like very captivating to me. And then lastly, this is one I read on Halloween on an airplane. I think I read it on 2 or 3 different flights, like back to back, which was so much fun because we were flying on Halloween, so it was awesome to read this. And this is The Graveyard Book by Neil Gaiman, illustrated by Dave McKean. I got the illustrated edition. 2 Neil Gaiman books made this list. It's around 312 pages. I didn't have to read this book in one sitting. If we hadn't been like flying on planes, I wouldn't probably have read it like all at once. It didn't like suck me in that much that I like had to know what was gonna happen, but it was very easy to read in one sitting, and I really enjoyed it. It was really fun to read for Halloween. This one is technically a Jungle Book retelling, but very twisted. So this one is about a boy whose parents die, and he winds up as a toddler going into a graveyard, and ghosts decide that they're going to take care of him. So his name is Nobody Owens, and they call him Bod, I think, and the ghosts of this graveyard take care of him, and he grows up in a graveyard. So that's kind of the Jungle Book, like different situation, setting, and then there's like mystery and things like in here. This one I think is a middle grade book, and it's definitely spooky, perfect for Halloween. I don't like absolutely love Neil Gaiman books like everybody else, but I really enjoy them. I just always feel like there's one aspect missing for me, and I can't quite figure it out. But I really did like this one, and it was fun. Again, I don't think I would have read it in one sitting if I hadn't been in that situation, but if you're looking for like a Halloween read to read all at once, it's very easy to go through. There's lots of pictures, so that cuts back on your page time. The writing is really big, so it's really good for that. This one would also be super good for a readathon, which I'm going to do a video on books that are good for readathons in the future, because I learned a lot from Booktubeathon this year. But yeah, this is another one that I read in one sitting. So those are the first 5 books I'm going to talk about that I read in one sitting / one day. I really don't have a lot more. I think I only have like 2 or 3 more. I do have some audiobooks that I listen to in one day / one sitting. It's harder to do that because of how much you have to listen to. But if you guys are interested in audiobooks that I listen to in one day, let me know down below in the comments. I'm not sure if that will like transfer quite as well, but let me know some books that you guys read in one sitting / in one day, things that are good for readathons as well. And I will see you guys next time on The Bright Side. Bye! The next one is We Were Liars by